In this video, I'm laying out 6 of my best tips so that you can improve in Season 12 of Apex Legends. Now, I'm going to cover some tips that have personally helped me out a ton, and I don't see too many people talking about them. So if you listen to all 6, I guarantee you will be well on your way to improving quickly in this new season. So let's do this. Tip number 1, use the legend to their max potential. I can tell you from experience, everyone at one time or another severely underutilizes the legend or legends that they play. See, the aspect of having multiple abilities in a game like Apex helps make for some of the best and worst gaming moments. But since there's 20 legends, this can get to be pretty overwhelming if you fluctuate on a lot of different legends in the time you spend playing. So I recommend honing in on 2 to 3 legends, and this way you have backup options if your main gets taken, but at the same time you don't corner yourself to only being a one-trick. I think being proficient in 2 legends is probably the sweet spot for the newer or more casual player. But obviously, if you have a lot of time on your hands, swap legends around and get used to playing them all. But I do understand that is a lot of work due to a lot of the nuance that these legends have. See, the bottom line is you can always be an asset with your abilities, but on the flip side, you can be a huge liability to you and your teammates if you don't know when or how to use those abilities. Practice, 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 and watch players who are better than you using the legend that you're trying to improve with. I think some of you will be surprised to see how much you can learn from other good players if you just pay attention to what they do and when they do it. Tip number 2. Now, I was going to give a simple tip like play with your team, but I need to go further than that. If you really want to improve, I'm not even kidding with this tip. It's helped me out so much, and it's something I do whether I solo queue or when I play with my friends. We all know Apex is a team game, and it's extremely difficult to win 1v3s or really any disadvantage fight without some isolation or some help. So one fundamental tip is to always be aware of the proximity between you and your 2 teammates and the enemies. Now, understanding the layout of enemies will be an ongoing process. At times it will be easier, and at times it will be way more difficult. However, keeping tabs on where your teammates are, this is much easier, and this is vital to success in Apex. Here's why. If one of my teammates is a little bit ahead of me and they bump into a new team and that enemy team is closer together than our team is, this can be a huge disadvantage for us. Pre-made teams, aka teams that are squatted up together, will make you pay for this 10 times more than 3 players solo queuing. See, I started to realize that having teammates close to one another was often a recipe for winning that fight. So I started to pay way more attention to where they were at all times. I used things like my mini map to see how close I was to them, or I looked at my monitor to see where they were if they were in front of me, and I would quickly reflect on where I thought the enemies were at. This helped me not get so lost during fights, but also helped me be a better teammate overall. Some may think this is a basic tip, and it is, but it's not something that is super easy for a lot of players because we tend to have tunnel vision and just think about ourselves. So try this out and start to see how much more success you start finding during these fights in Apex. Stay close and play off certain angles that complement one another. Tip number 3, start identifying why and how you're dying. See, many of you know I coach players over on Fiverr, and one of the best ways players learn is through reviewing their own gameplay, specifically the moments that go wrong. Now, everyone can do this one way or another. You don't need to buy a coaching session or even record every moment you play. You can simply set up a program on your PC to record previous segments, and I know you can do the same thing on consoles. Regardless, I started to see a lot of patterns in how players die, and it could range widely depending on where the player's skill level is, but if you start to be a little bit more conscious of the moment and evaluating your position versus the enemies, you should start to see things from a different light. Now, as you go about your game, start developing a narrative of what you think the situation is. And this is called information gathering. It's something every good player is constantly doing. And the best way to improve at Apex Legends is to try to learn from your mistakes that you've previously made. The hardest part about that is that no situation is too alike. When you're reviewing your footage, try to look at it from the perspective of what you knew in that moment, not the hindsight vision of, oh yeah, of course that guy was behind that corner, how could I have not known that? No, you got to think about what you know in that moment and how you can best play to what you think is true. You guys probably are familiar with the saying, the first step in solving any problem is recognizing there is one. Reviewing your gameplay will help you start to see these problems over and over again. If you're enjoying this video, all I ask in return is for you to smash the like button. This is free, it helps my video out a ton, and I'm giving you all of these tips. I mean, you guys are going to be well on your way to being insane players at Apex, and I'm going to have to fight you in my lobbies. It's going to be insanely difficult. So just give that like button a little tap, and let's move on with the rest of these tips. Tip number 4, start building your game sense. What do you guys think separates the good from the great players in this game? Well, it all centers around game sense. How does one build game sense? Well, it all begins with identifying specific variables that you're experiencing, whether that's how to combat a specific legend comp, weapon loadout, or you're playing with your friends and they both go down, learning the best way to clutch up that 1v3. See, game sense is a broad topic. It's made up of every single variable that you experience in that moment. Let me explain 2 basic ways to expand your game sense. Let's say an enemy crypto is about to EMP you and your teammates. For newer players, the most important thing is to identify what is happening to you in real time, so you see the drone setting off and you understand what it is. The second way you could improve your game sense, and this could be for more experienced players, is to just figure out how to combat that situation. So simply put, the quicker you can identify what is happening to you, the better you can start to plan to deal with it, on how to counter it, or just how to react to it. You could destroy the drone and cancel the EMP. You may not be able to shoot the drone, so you tank the damage from the EMP, but you get behind some cover. You start to heal, and you understand the enemy is about to push. Maybe one of your teammates uses an ability to prevent that push or stall that push, or you guys just set up behind certain cover and angles that are favorable to you once that enemy team starts to push. You peek the corner at the perfect time to beam one, and all of a sudden the fight is now more in your favor. You see, everything in Apex matters, and the sooner you realize this, the better off you will be. Like I just said in the last tip, no situation is two alike, so developing the game sense is really understanding what is what and how to go about dealing with that. The beauty of Apex is you will learn quickly, and sometimes from others too, about what works and what doesn't when you find yourself in certain situations. The quicker your mind can react or be proactive to whatever situation you find yourself in, the better of a player you will start to be. Tip number 5, if you want to have an easier time improving in Apex this season, I suggest using some of the meta legends and meta weapons. Now, we all know everyone's got their own opinion on who's the best legends, but ultimately the data doesn't lie when it comes to pick rates. And when you also factor in who the pros and high-level content creators are using in ranked specifically, this does help form a legend meta for the season or even the split. As far as legends, there's definitely a ton of different comps you can run. I'm not going to list every single comp that would be viable. I did just make a tier list so you can check out who I think is the best and the worst, but still, just understand, good players can make a bad legend look great. I will give you 6 recommendations, but this is just for the sake of simplicity. The legends would be Valkyrie, Gibby, Bloodhound, Crypto, Wraith, and Ash. Now let's talk about some weapon loadouts. I usually go for an AR or an SMG coupled with a shotgun. Weapons like the R301 or Flatline used with a shotgun this season is really a great loadout. So you can have flexibility for those mid to long range fights, but you're also extremely viable up close with your shotgun or the hipfire spray of your R301. Weapons are also a preference, and Apex has done a pretty good job balancing the weapons, but you want to be careful not hindering yourself for specific fights. For example, don't run a loadout like a wingman with a triple take. 2 single fire guns aren't going to do you too many favors if you're not proficient with them and you find yourself in a lot of up close encounters. I also try not to run 2 weapons of the same ammo class unless it's a rare scenario where I have the opportunity to have a ton of that ammo, usually 300 plus ammo. I kind of hate speaking on these types of tips because everyone has their own opinion and they always try to say ridiculous things in the comments like this one. Anyways, let's wrap up with the 6th tip. Warm-up routine. This is crucial, and I know some of y'all overlook this tip and you might be ready to click off because you're like, oh, warming up, blah blah blah, but that doesn't matter because it's a huge difference maker, not only in my gameplay, but I also see it when I coach other players. This simple tip helps muscle memory re-engage with the recoil patterns of weapons and how the guns feel overall. You could take a couple days off from playing, and it's easy to overlook how slow the Peacekeeper shoots with no shotgun bolt. So I recommend spending anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes warming up in the firing range before every time you start heading into some games. Practice specifically with the guns you look to use in game, and if you have more time on your hands, you can practice with weapons that you don't use as much, but you may be forced to use if it's an off-drop situation. The goal should be to be decent with all of the weapons, and that way if you end up landing on a Havoc but you're not comfortable with the Havoc, you could still get by with it until you get a couple kills and then swap that gun out for something else that you prefer. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope these 6 tips will help improve your gameplay in Season 12. If you see me in your lobbies, just try to go easy on me. I mean, I just basically gave you the roadmap to success, so, you know, take it light on me. That's all I'm asking. I'll catch you guys on my next video. Peace.